Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, Dan can hear me now.
Yes, yes,
Excellent, so we are good to go.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's both.
I just got the next thing, I'm gonna sit on, right?
Did she jump in? Because if I think I let everybody in that's waiting, let me double check. Everybody's in that was in.
Okay. I was just speaking to Kevin a second ago. Is he still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great, Kevin.
I think I got everybody that's trying to get in is in.
So Greg isn't there yet?
No, Greg is there, I believe. Brooke mentioned somebody's trying to get in.
No, Lynn.
Huh? It's Liz, yeah, I don't see her on the list anyway yet. It's the normal one that she would normally join. Where is it? There it is. There.
So Dan, we did send a note to Anne, correct?
Yeah, but Ann couldn't make it, but Kevin's here.
There, hi Kevin,
Okay.
Hi,
nice.
thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was in my office, but I was thrown into, my wife has the flu, so I had to take my daughter to softball practice. So I'm waiting for her outside our softball facility.
Oh, great.
We appreciate you being here. That's a lot. Thank you so much. So I'll call this work session of the select board to order, and we do have a quorum. And so I think we'll just go ahead and hop on into housing. So Kevin, we really appreciate you being here. I was hoping that Craig Puttich would be here from the Hancock County Planning Commission, but he doesn't seem to be on yet. So here in Castine, as in all of Maine, we are experiencing a shortage of workforce and affordable housing. Especially workforce housing for our teachers, professors at MMA, staff at MMA, people who work in shops, our nurses, all of these people are having a hard time finding housing. And I think it's a countrywide thing. You can probably speak to it better than I. But so we would appreciate anything you can tell us about how to fund housing projects.
I'm sorry, the last part of the question, what?
How to fund housing projects, or don't you work with, in sort of the funding world?
Yes, exactly. All right, well, I'll start. I'll just give a little overview of the organization that Ann and I work with. Ann and Dan know each other going back several decades, and I got to know Dan when I first joined NDC a little bit more than 20 years ago. But we are what used to be National Development Council, now Grow America. We are a national nonprofit, and we economic and community development organization. So we work mostly on behalf of municipalities like Castine and a lot of community-based neighborhood not-for-profit development organizations. That I'm familiar with some up in Maine, and essentially it's a broad-ranging organization. I happen to run the East Team's technical advisory unit, so we work on behalf of municipalities and some local development organizations, and we help them get their prioritized projects done in terms of coming up with a financial capital structure for these developments. And we work on mostly developments where conventional financing is not flowing freely to cover the full development costs. So we do that on a real estate side and a business development standpoint. So we help our clients get their prioritized projects done. We help them size their projects and size their level of public assistance. Basically, we look at when there's public incentives involved, whether it be tax abatements or contribution of land or direct financial participation. We, on behalf of the municipalities, analyze those developments, determine whether or not that assistance is needed. We right size it, if you will, and answer the question. But for the availability of this assistance, this development would not be financially feasible. And then right size it in the sense that it takes enough to create financial feasibility, but not more than what is necessary. And then when we're working in our client communities, we activate our affiliated products. So over the years, and we've been at this for over 50 years, um, uh, oh, um, as necessary, we activate our affiliated products. So we have a lending division. We have two different what we call community development financial institutions, and it's through those CDFIs that we met Dan, and we're able to participate on some loans to expand the growth of Bread Alone. So we have two different CDFIs, and now we're involved in both real estate lending and small business lending. We have a development division. We develop a lot of public facilities on behalf of our municipal clients. Generally speaking, municipalities don't like to be in the development business, but there's a lot of public facilities that are necessary as part of what they need to invest in. So we develop a lot of public facilities, whether it be municipal buildings or parking garages, on behalf of our municipal clients to lessen the burdens of government, and trying to pass on the most efficient capital structure or finance structure to finance those public facilities. We're also have an equity division where we raise money from a lot of our bank partners throughout the country, and we invest in projects that have and are eligible for housing tax credits and or historic credits. And we have also gotten involved in recent years in renewable energy credits for energy efficiency and alternative energy projects. Um, and then we also have a training academy. We have trained thousands and thousands of economic and community development professionals through our professional training program, one in economic development finance and one in housing development finance. And those of us who work in the field, we also double as instructors for those professional certification programs. And we'd be happy to offer them to some of the community and economic development officials that are working in your region, because actually we onlined a lot of our curriculum. So a lot of individuals are opting to take it on a self-paced online basis instead of in person or in lieu of webinar type seminars that we run. So that's a little bit about Grow America in a nutshell. I work on behalf, or I'm the managing director for our technical advisory teams. So we work with municipalities to again to help get their prioritized projects done. And in instances like Castine, where you're trying to perhaps think of programs to encourage and incentivize affordable housing, we work with them to introduce programs to be responsive to the marketplace. Um, with respect to affordable housing, my goodness, I've never seen such a focus based upon the acute need for not only affordable housing, but rental housing in general. Because in a lot of the marketplaces, the construction of new rental housing, it's difficult to make work financially. The construction costs have gone up so much, and the income stream from rental housing in many marketplaces don't even pencil out. Now, you have enjoyed a tremendous growth and increase in property values. Um, down east where you are in Maine. So, I can imagine with the with the service-based economy, especially in the summertime, it's so difficult to house the service-based economic sector. And I deal with the same in eastern Long Island, where I'm doing a lot of work, and we're introducing ways in which we can develop more affordable housing in eastern Long Island, where it's so expensive to construct, and the land is so expensive. So I think with affordable housing, everything starts with site control. And when a municipality is looking to get involved in affordable housing, one of the most immediate and tangible things that could be put on the table is some of the municipal or publicly owned land. And with respect to land, everyone, if there is municipally owned land, city officials or town officials, they always want to get the fair market value of it. But for purposes of affordable housing, where generally speaking, the costs exceed the valuation, and therefore there's a funding gap, the contribution of land or properties at a discount or full contribution to the development is a ways of reducing the funding gap and the financial challenge. The other things that we advise our municipal clients on with respect to affordable housing is the consideration and implementation of a tax exemption policy, so that if you're able to arrange for partial tax abatements for the properties that are being developed as affordable housing, that increases the income stream, it increases the valuation, and it increases the amount of money that could be borrowed to be part of the capital structure. Um, and then we have also, if there is a capital source, we have worked and introduced um, um, subordinated soft lending programs that could be part of the capital structure. So many of the places, whether it be towns or counties or cities where there's an acute affordable housing development, those municipalities have invested into affordable housing by capitalizing, and in some instances, it's the issuance of bonds to capitalize a fund that could be used to cover the delta between production costs and what can be accessed with conventional debt and equity. And then for larger scale residential developments, we're very active with housing tax credits. We're an investor, as I mentioned, in those housing tax credits. We have also done a lot of co-development for affordable housing with the use of housing tax credits, because many not-for-profit developers who are looking to develop affordable housing, unless they have demonstrated um, their uh, um, their previous experience in putting together a very complex capital structure with low-income housing tax credits, they're not going to get the allocation from, in your case, the Maine State Housing Authority. And we've done a lot of training over the years in which Maine State Housing Authority staff have attended and been trained through our housing development finance program. Actually, I got my start in community and economic development in Portland, Maine, right after I graduated from college. I spent a few years with the Community Development Corporation in Portland, and that's how I got to know Maine. I miss it terribly. I always thought that one day I'd move back, but haven't yet been able to do that. But hasn't been out of my mind, and certainly something I'd like to consider. But trying to get my kids through high school, and three of them are in college at one time right now, so I don't have a lot of flexibility. Um, so I don't know. I put out a lot there, but the short of it is that we work on behalf of municipalities and local communities to help them achieve their goals. And in your case, there's a huge need for affordable housing. I don't know about on other elements. I think Ann mentioned infrastructure needs that you're looking at and how to finance that. So I think you have a sense of how we operate and what I've been involved with in communities around the country. So maybe I'll shut up, and I'd be happy to listen to you and what your priorities are and what you'd like to get accomplished there, and see if there's a match and a way in which we might be able to assist your efforts.
Thank you very much. Dan, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I just, my question was, Kevin, so if we decide that we're going to work with you, and now we're at the beginning of this process, and
Yeah.
and there's a lot of unknown here. So I guess my
Yeah.
question is, do we just have like a letter of intent that the Castine signs with you, and we start?
No, I don't think we're there yet, Dan. You know, as I see it, I think this is a series of conversations so that we get to know what your problems and opportunities are, just so that we can prioritize what you need and determine how we might be able to help you. So. Oftentimes it's an iterative process whereby it will take a series of conversations
Okay.
for us to really determine how, if we can help you, and how that might be, and what that would constitute in terms of a relationship or a scope of services that can be memorialized in perhaps an LOI or eventually a contract.
Okay. Um, um, Go ahead, Roberta.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask if Doug would be interested in sort of laying out. We have a member of our community who's very interested in doing a development of sorts, not of sorts, of real, but and he has the land and he has the infrastructure, the water and electricity and stuff ready. It's just like you said, the building costs have gone up exponentially. And so, would it be okay? Would you be willing to give a little background? And
I guess my only question would be, you seem to indicate that you work with nonprofits and municipalities.
Yes,
Is that correct? So
that's correct.
You don't work with private developers.
Well, we indirectly work with private developers. If you have a private developer, for instance, that's interested in developing affordable housing there, we're normally contracted by the municipality or a not-for-profit, but in doing so, we're providing advisory services to help put together a financial structure or a program that would be able to work financially. So we don't contract out with private developers where we have we have an individual contract with them and they're paying our dime. But we have worked and helped a lot of private developers. But we're reporting back to and we're contracted with municipality or a local development organization rather than directly with the private developer. But one of the things I'd be happy to do without getting into a contract is if you have a uh, I've popped into a number of mill communities where they have these great former industrial buildings that are so well suitable for adaptive reuse. And by the way, they're my most favorite projects. I've done a lot of adaptive reuse of mill buildings into affordable housing. You probably have less of those in your area of Maine than in elsewhere throughout the state. But what I want to say is that if you have a prospective development, if you have interest on the behalf of a developer, and they're trying to figure out how to make numbers work, because if you're developing affordable housing, you have that restrictive income stream, and that restrictive income stream limits the valuation and limits the capital that you're able to raise. So what we do is we cover we look to create a funding structure that covers the difference between how much it costs to produce and how much it's worth after it's placed into production. And honestly, with affordable housing, depending on how you define it, and it's because it covers a broad range. And we're involved in developments that are housing the extremely low income, affordable housing, workforce housing, and those are classified by different rungs in the percentages of area median income. I meant to look up the AMI area median income within your labor market area to have a sense of what is affordable, because everything, how you define affordability is a function of the area median income. So affordable housing covers a broad range of types of housing. Um, um, but the short of it is, the income stream is a lot less than market rate units, and there needs to be other funding sources between conventional debt and equity. That's our specialty, is to put together a funding structure that covers that delta, whereby you can assure that there's enough money for quality, affordable housing to be built, and you're raising enough money to cover that delta between what it costs to produce and what can be raised conventionally. So if you have a few prospective developments, I'd be happy to take a look at the proposed program, the proposed cost, the proposed funding structure, and have ideas about how to cover the differential. We obviously know of the housing tax credit programs that every housing finance agency, such as Maine State Housing Authority, manages, but I'd have to get familiarized with some of the other state resources, because there's got to be, hopefully, there's other state resources that the state has created to make available to localities like Castine to encourage affordable housing. And I've never seen anything like it in terms of the states really stepping up to the plate and capitalizing new, innovative housing programs. I've seen several states recently in the last year introduce affordable home ownership opportunity programs for affordable home ownership programs. And I see more and more states capitalizing very significant soft subordinated funding sources to be part of the capital structure. I don't. Next step is to determine whether or not Castine, what resources potentially you could make available to be part of that. Certainly, you can work in. Part of the role is partial tax abatements and contribution of land at discounted or contributions of those properties, whether it be land or buildings. But again, if you have a prospective development or prospective property that's suitable for affordable housing, I'd be happy to take a look at it, see how, and give you some initial thoughts in terms of how to best program it and best come up with a capital structure.
Kevin, if I can ask, this is Amy, I'm one of the select board members. I just wanted to go back to one of your comments about the median income that you would look at in the area. Can you explain how does that analysis work when you have a community such as ours that's quite affluent in terms of second home community, seasonal community, where, in other instances, I know that it can make it difficult for our community to apply for loans or grants because we look like an affluent community, but we're also trying to serve the needs of a workforce or a cohort of people that are having, a hard time affording the housing that's here. So how do you look at that median income without getting it skewed because of the wealth in the community?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, because I think probably the demographics are somewhat skewed because you have a lot of seasonal residents that are not there all year. So it'd be interesting to see what the demographics are. And I was hoping to have some time this afternoon and do a little bit of research in anticipation of this call. But I'd be happy to do some of that research and for our second call once I've had the time to review that. But the area median income is the median income for the metropolitan statistical area. But again, for your area, it could be skewed based upon that seasonal factor. A colleague of mine, and this is probably very similar. A colleague of mine years ago worked in the Jackson Hole, Wyoming community where they had so many out-of-state affluent second home buyers. And it really distorted the demographic profile of the area because although it was very affluent base of both full-time and part-time residents in the Jackson Hole area, they had a horrific problem with affordable housing. So my colleague worked with them for quite extensively in putting together a range of programs that could be utilized and working in collaboration with the state to establish some affordable housing programs. And you probably have a little bit of similarities with the efforts to create affordable housing in down east as was the case in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and certainly some of my experience of working with the towns and municipalities out in eastern Long Island and where it's exorbitantly expensive, and the economy in the summer is almost it has been so hampered by the fact that the service workers take it's more than two hours for some of them to get to work on a daily basis because you have to go so far out so far back west to be able to afford something because none of them can afford anything, and there's no rental housing or very little rental housing in eastern Long Island. So playing to a little bit of a similar dynamic. Um,
No, I was gonna say that's a concern, and that those kinds of communities that you described, Kevin, are pretty much, a reality here in Castine as well.
Yeah.
Belong under Jackson Hole, even, we have a college in our town here, and there are plenty of people who work at the college, but live an hour away or an hour and a half away. Often because of housing struggles to find something affordable in a
Yeah.
larger community. So, and not to
Well,
mention personality as well.
what's the college locally?
Maine Maritime Academy.
Oh yeah, wow, okay.
I'm just gonna ask, is there anybody who has any questions? I think, Doug, I think this sounds like an opportunity for maybe us to sit down with Kevin.
Yep.
Go through your project.
And he said exactly what I said. We have the space, we have the envelope to build it. All the civil engineering is done. It's just that when you add up the cost of construction, divide it by the number of units, and then do a return on the investment, you can't get to a reasonable rent rate.
Yeah.
So we're working the equation backwards, and I've been trying to explain to the selectmen, I can't work the equation backwards to get to the number I want to get to. And I've explained to the selectmen, I'm not necessarily in favor of tax incentive tax credit financing, because as I've researched it here in Maine, it does not afford for the long-term viability of the structures. It's set up for day one and it makes sense on day one, but it doesn't put reserves for replacements aside. So the developer, I would end up laying in bed at night wondering if the roof failed after 10 years instead of 30, how would I pay for the new roof? And that's the unattractiveness of it.
And then that's why it's important to build a pro forma that where those repair replacement reserves are adequately expensed every year and escrowed so that there is money for future capital improvements. So when you size the debt, you certainly size the debt with factoring in sufficient expensing every year for repair replacement reserves. And I work with elected officials and communities all over the country with respect to the tax abatement issue. I'm not one to say that there's even if it's developed by not-for-profit developers, if there's an income stream, those properties should be paying something in the form of taxes. But full taxes reduces the amount in which the valuation of the property and how much they can borrow. So, and I'm not saying that tax abatement in and of itself is a solution for affordable housing to be built. It's really a combination of contributions of publicly owned land or buildings, subordinated soft sources of financing, as well as savings on operating expenses in the form of savings on taxes. So it's really a mixed bag of approaches so that these developments can pencil out. Yeah, and I imagine that's another challenge that you have, given the lack of affordability. It's more difficult to get the workers there to do the work. So there's probably a premium on construction costs in your marketplace. And that's indeed what I see in Eastern Long Island. There's at least a 15% premium on construction costs based upon the difficulty in getting the workers there.
So, yeah. Okay.
Roberta, my thought is we've got a lot of information here. Perhaps in our next work session, we can just kind of put together some bullet points for Kevin and plan our next call with him.
Yeah, and again, if you have any sites in mind where a program for affordable housing has been established. My general approach of every development I look at, I want to understand what it's going to cost. And then we put together an operating pro forma based upon the targeted affordable rents at what levels or what level of affordability we're discussing. We look at operating expenses to make sure that they're sufficient so that the building's going to be maintained and managed properly. And then you'd like to think, even though they're restricted rents, the property could support some level of debt. So and then could attract some level of equity too. So we look at the cost and then we compare it against, based upon the operating pro forma, how much of capital can be conventionally attracted. And then basically we're solving for a funding gap. And there's a whole range of approaches to solve that funding gap.
So it sounds, Kevin, to me like perhaps if you could speak with Doug before our next work session, and you and Doug could look at the project, and that would give you an opportunity to come up with some of those gap measures.
Or what did you say? Give me the opportunity to come up to Maine. I'd love the opportunity to come up to Maine.
No, sorry, it wasn't, but we'll have to work on that because you'll have to come to Castine at some point to see the project. I would imagine it's very important.
Yeah, I almost accompanied my daughter who went up last week to ski at. Her boyfriend goes to Colby, and she went up to Sugarloaf. I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't skied at Sugarloaf in so long. So I'm looking for excuses to get back to Maine.
We're going to give you some good ones.
Yeah, Castine's a good one. Well, we'll get, it's okay with you, we'll get your information to Doug, who's got his project pretty much ready to go. And then
Doug is the developer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
and again, I said we don't normally contract with developers, but look, if this is a development that's important for you guys to see, we'd be happy to take a look at it and share
Kevin,
our thoughts in terms of.
Kevin, one of our problems is there is so little land available for development. I mean, it's not like Castine is sitting on 12 acres where we can say this is where we want to put it. We don't have property. We would either have to buy property or work with someone like Doug who has the property, because we're a peninsula. There's a very finite amount of land here.
Yeah, understood.
well,
Okay, well,
And if there is a finite, I don't even know if it would, there are other tools such as land trusts, but given the fact that there's such a finite amount of land, maybe there's not sufficient land for a land trust to work out.
and the town can work with you perhaps we really want to get this done.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you have the best bird in hand that you have is Doug's property. And so, yeah, we'd be happy to take a further look at it, understand the program, and see how we could piece something together that would make sense financially for all parties.
Thank you. And nobody else has any questions? Okay, all right.
Thank you, thank you,
so much.
Kevin.
Okay, good to meet y'all. All right, bye-bye.
Take care, bye-bye.
Well, hopefully we'll make
I mean,
progress.
listen, I've worked with them for over 20 years. They are movers and shakers. I mean, if they say they're going to do something, they do it.
Fantastic. All right. Okay, so I'm sorry that Greg Hiddich from HCPC didn't manage to get here. Something must have come up in the county. And we never did hear back from the gentleman at Maine Housing.
Yeah, and my emails that I sent most recently keep getting bounced
Derek
back.
sent
so
emails, I
I even
sent
left a
emails.
message,
They're
so.
just not talking.
I sent an email today just to them in general. I
Yeah,
don't know if you saw
I
that,
I
yeah.
think they're just inundated. I think every
Yeah.
community is reaching out to them.
Amy, since you've become a part of the board, have you filled in the blanks on one of the programs that we talked to the Genesis Fund about? Do you understand what was offered?
I'm starting to come up to speed, but I
Okay.
will be.
Can I talk about it real briefly with you, just to get, and then while Roberta's here, because if I tell it wrong, maybe Roberta would. Since we're on housing.
Yeah, no, that's fine, yeah.
One of the programs that they offered was, Roberta, stop me at any point, interject. Genesis Fund is subcontracted by Maine State Housing.
Mhm.
So they're being paid by Maine State Housing to put forth Maine State Housing programs and work with developers such as myself in towns like Castine to put all the fabric together, just as Kevin is doing. So one of the programs was exciting to me because it offered $80,000, up to $80,000 a unit in forgiveness. So if we built 10 units, each unit would get an $80,000 check to be paid to the developer. So that would allow me to build a unit for, say, $280,000 and then turn around and sell it to the person, a family, they would own it, not rent it, for $200,000. Now, those are just budget numbers. And the idea of it is, the part that I really liked is that when somebody comes and they rent a property for me, they don't have any incentive because it's not an investment like a home is to a typical family. But this program, it made me excited because in this case, the people would buy the home, and then after 11 years, if they kept it 11 years, then whatever the home appreciated, they then could sell the home and they pocketed that profit after 11 years. And so that would make these units appealing to workforce housing in Castine, because family would see that if they moved into the unit and they lived in our community in Castine, their kids went to our schools and they stayed for 11 years and they kept their house looking good and everybody else kept their house looking good, then in 11 years, they would have a nest egg if they chose to cash out at that day.
And if they choose to cash out, though, do you risk then having that piece of the inventory of affordable housing become not affordable anymore because you have the profit, the interest of profit, right? So do we risk 11, 12, 20 years now losing that affordability on that housing side?
On that and each unit that's sold, I believe that is true.
That's true.
Yeah.
So.
But I don't know if there is a deed restriction. I think the people get the money, but I think there might be a deed restriction on how much money the people that are buying it can make. So I do think it remains,
Right.
but this is again.
Check my notes,
We'll have
but
to
yeah.
check that.
The first owners, how much the people buying from you can make,
No,
or the ones they sell
the ones
to?
they
How,
sell to.
who they sell to, I think there's income restriction on how much they can be making. So it can't go
Making as income?
income, yes. So a
To encourage
millionaire,
people to price it affordably to attract a certain kind of buyer.
I'm not saying it that way. I'm saying that if they buy it for 300 and let's say in 11 years, it's now worth 450. A millionaire can't come in and buy it. It has to be somebody that is
Meet certain
Work-
financial qualifications.
qualifications. So it's not gonna be somebody buying it who could afford anything in town. It's probably gonna be somebody buying it that has that, but that is a John
Not even.
Right, so I was
Easy
saying,
question.
because if you have that restriction on the qualifications for the prospective buyer, then it would seem like the goal is to incentivize the current owner to not jack up the price for profitability, because
No,
then they're not
no,
gonna appeal to the kind of the qualified buyer that they're looking for.
They are gonna have appreciation and they are gonna realize that appreciation. But I think there's a cap on who it can be sold to. So it's not gonna be sold to, it's gonna, ideally fall in the hands of somebody else that's workforce.
That can afford
And it's just an idea.
it. Mhm.
No, it's-
And then the other part of this is that there's 10 slots on one side of the road. And then there are potentially 4 slots on the other side of the road where I'm pretty much ready just to build 4 more units. And that I think I don't really need much to do. But really, we should have another conversation with John Eade and then definitely, it's upsetting that Main State Housing isn't here or doesn't return calls. Because it's their job to do this and to help us do it. And this is my frustration I've been running into for the
Well,
past.
You've dealt with it for years and everyone at the state, everyone in the municipal level is dealing with it right now. I think they are so inundated by calls and emails, but they're not getting back to people. And even the grant that we wrote for, we didn't hear about the grant for 6 months after they had actually awarded it. They didn't get to us and we still don't have a signed contract because they're a mess right now. So
And then I know you guys all have a group and I've asked that group indirectly to think about what is it we want? Do we want 2-bedroom units
Right.
built? Do we want, for the people that work at TMC, really a 1-bedroom unit might be the best because they're not typically gonna have a family. Whereas a 3-bedroom unit is probably best for the future firefighter or the teacher. But what is that mix?
And who helps us determine that mix? Is that something we need to come up
Well,
with,
and-
or
and
is there
here
ways
I-
of analyzing?
And we started sort of doing a similar kind of study with information from our company. And they do come up with that. Unfortunately, I think, and Bobby and Brooke and Gil, tell me if I'm getting this wrong. On Deer Isle, when they just did their first big housing initiative, they did apartments. And they went with a lot more 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom because they thought they were going to be bringing in young families. And they had a lot more people who wanted 1-bedrooms that were just a single person looking for a 1-bedroom. So it's a difficult thing to figure out.
I would say we need both. I mean, it's not gonna be either or, it's gonna be both.
It is. gonna
Right, but
be
trying to
both.
find the balance of that
Yes.
mix.
Yeah, that balance is going to be.
And I'm asking, I'm
Yeah.
saying, I don't know what the right balance is,
Right.
so I'm looking to all of you. It doesn't matter from a septic point of view or from an engineering point of view, the engineering is done. We just have to decide whether we're gonna have 2 3-bedroom units or 4 2-bedroom units
Right.
and balance it out to the same number of bedrooms.
Right. So, okay, so we have to get an answer for that too. So are you good to reach out to Kevin? And
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank
And if
you.
you guys can start a conversation, then
Yeah.
we can all get back together and see how he can work with the town,
And really, I think we need to get John Egan here
get him back here. Yeah.
because he needs to talk to all of you and the rest of the audience here. Because it's difficult to play the telephone game where it's just 2 of us hearing it, and they're trying to repeat it accurately.
Mhm.
And I really think that the information needs to flow as freely as possible so that none of it gets misconstrued or there's the feeling that it's not being fairly shared.
Sure. Thank you.
Is John the person not responding?
No, John has responded and he had a long
John's
conversation
great.
with Roberta and I, and he would have kept talking to us, but I was swamped.
Wait.
I had reached
Is he with
that.
the Genesis Fund?
Yes, Genesis.
Okay, and the other person who's not responding to
Main
emails
housing.
is Main Housing, okay.
But the Genesis Fund does work for Main State
Yeah,
Housing.
they do.
Right.
So they are being paid by Main State Housing to put these projects together between towns and developers.
But he had so much information that.
The irony is that's who put me in touch with the Genesis Fund person is the person from Maine Housing.
Really?
So I don't know, like now, like,
Maybe
I don't know
he
what's
thinks
going
we're already talking to me, has it? So
Yeah, I don't
we're
know.
gonna work this out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all so much. So the next thing on our agenda is safety at best building. And, Randy, thank you for being here as well to kind of, this week we talked about that a little bit, about when we block off streets, we need to make sure that, there are people there to make sure that maybe golf carts can't come down the street or other vehicles can't come down the street, etc. So, Randy, did you want to say anything about that, or?
Yeah, you guys, I guess, understand we want to make it safe for everybody when they come to this event on Bastille Day. And common variables you got to think about, there's a lot of alcohol. There's a lot of people, that come to this. They're not all from town. And when you barricade a road, you have to have somebody standing at the barricade to direct you. And each point in where you're barricading, there should be somebody there to explain it to people or to give them good directions. So it takes manpower to enforce it. What we're worried about, if there's ever an incident, medical, fire, whatever, and then getting people to move and to getting us in there to do the job that we need to do. So we need to, the committee, whoever runs this, to think about it and how the best way to set it up. With this many people in a short area, very small, we gotta, think ahead. I guess I'll put it that way.
Thank you. So Karen,
Can I just clarify, are we speaking specifically about the picnic en blanc? Because there are lots of other events that happen on the.
Absolutely, same thing. Weddings, you close the road, there should be somebody there.
wedding.
But we're talking about Bastille Day, so within the context of Bastille Day, are your comments mostly directed to the picnic en blanc, or are there other events within the Bastille celebration that need?
No, that's the only one that I could see any concerns where people just stopped in the middle of the road and just offloaded, and there was very close calls, as I'll say, for people unloading their stuff and doing it. It's an opportunity, but we need to make it safer.
So I'm sorry, Karen, did you want to talk about ideas that you guys have?
Well, I don't really have any ideas, but I was curious as to what Randy was hoping would happen, because that would be helpful to know. If he's thinking there's gonna be fire engines on each end, or if we just need people on each end directing. I'm just.
Well, a thought would be in our membership, they came up with, why don't you do it around the whole circle of the common?
Yeah, it's funny, I was thinking about that the other day too. I think they started it on Court Street because it's a nice flat surface and it's easier to line the tables up. And I think if you're going up the hill and down the hill around the common, that could get a little tricky. So I think that's the reasoning behind having it on Court Street.
Well, again, each of the areas you barricade, we are not in the business of, we support where we can, but there's limited things we can continue to do. Who's ever putting this on has the accountability and the responsibility to making sure that people are safe. And that's what I'm asking that should be done.
Sure. And I don't want to put a burden on the fire department because I know that you're already overwhelmed with what you have to do. So, but it's good to hear what you're having to say because I really didn't realize that was a big factor,
So it sounds like if you have volunteers that can be at those locations to make sure that people are following the rules and
Sure.
And have them there in case there is a medical emergency or a fire emergency to move those barricades so the trucks can get through.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe if you just continue a dialogue with the fire department.
Sure.
As far as that would be great.
And then, Randy, I had another thought. Is it possible to pay a different fire department maybe to come down? Is that something that happens at all? I'm just trying so that that would take the burden off of, you know, the people in town.
Uh, you're gonna get another fire department, pay them, because we volunteer. That makes a lot of sense.
Has
But
she
no,
done?
No, I
Well, I'm
think,
just
I
trying to
think
come up with.
she was trying to
Right.
say that in case the members of our fire department wanted to attend the
Right.
function,
And enjoy it and.
that how does, how do you find other, you know, people from other communities, or how does that work?
I guess you gotta define the question for me a little bit better. And I'm sorry, I just didn't get it all.
No, I was, another thought that I had is I wondered if it would make sense to contact another community who maybe could bring in, some EMTs or some firemen that could be here on site for safety issues. Which
You
would
can
then
hire
allow-
the ambulance service from Blue Hill. You could hire them personnel and have a, you know, ambulance on site.
Sure.
And you can maybe hire some of our guys, but you're gonna have to pay them.
Right, right.
You know, so much, you know, a stipend worthwhile for their time, just standing there and doing that.
And I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
But you can hire them, you know, to be over here and ask them to stage themselves here and pay the ambulance service to be here.
Randy, what would be a good wage? Like if we were going to pay people per hour, what just so we can come up with some numbers. What do you think per person would be a fair wage?
35.
Okay. And how many people do you think we would need for an event like 6? Okay.
And you know, enough people to cover a fire elsewhere. If it happened at the same time, I guess that would be.
It depends what it is and the time of year it is, you know. And there's other people that may help that are on the outside just because of the event, but you know, they're gonna want to get paid
So-
for.
So Randy, is this something that we should be putting into our information that we give people? For instance, if they're having a wedding at Fort Madison, we should insert something in there saying that
Yes,
members of the Castine Fire Department are available for $35 an hour to help with traffic control or to have an EMT on site or whatever. Am I hearing this right?
there's a possibility. I have to talk to the membership more to get their feedback. We've had different discussions, but I've never said to them, hey, would you want to do this and how much money we'd want? I just threw that off the top of my head. But I talked to the membership. But all weddings, you know, on Perkins Street, Back Shore, you know, there has to be a little bit of organization to it and control.
I think we should just add that to our paperwork.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
And,
and
you know, fireworks, you know, that people, you know, they all want to sneak them in, you know, our town, you know, you have to get permission to have fireworks or the Chinese lanterns that are very dangerous and weddings and parking itself on the road.
And to follow on the comment that was just made a few minutes ago, I think I would encourage us though, before we put anything on a form or
We have to
thing,
make
to
sure.
have more conversations, because I think we would need to talk to Randy more and allow him time to speak to his
Yeah.
membership.
Yeah.
There has to be a balance between
We have to
hiring
know.
people and also allowing the Castine Fire Department to respond appropriately
Mhm.
to an emergency that might arise outside the event. And I think, as we all know, Castine Fire is not flush with personnel,
No,
right?
no.
But there may be some among the membership that
Might be
this might be
interested.
something good for them.
But we have to know if
There's
that's
gotta be-
possible, and if it is, we do need to have it included so that people understand that that's something they should be doing.
But I'd like to have more discussions.
I think we
About
should, definitely. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you for addressing this because it's been a concern for a while.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Solar. Okay, I'm sorry, I read the solar flag.
You did?
I did.
Mhm.
Alright.
You sound surprised.
Oh, no, I'm not
Did you think we wouldn't
surprised.
read it?
No, I
Um,
believe you'd read it.
When we started this, we were looking at just leasing the area to a solar project, and this to me, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong. It seems that he really wants us to build this project and use it for the town. Am I missing the point?
Well, I think it can go either way, that's the thing, but the problem is. Like I said, the off takers, if you do the little one, right, then we're going to be owning the 200 kilowatt one, right, AC one. Which we would be the off takers, and maybe we'd talk to the school and a few of the other places around that are smaller, like the church or somebody else, try to beef that up a little bit, but then you have the larger one, and that's, you know, that's questionable too, but, and then, you know, on his thing, he says, I'd like to present a system cost finance from there based on the feedback preference of the board. I'd like to secure a letter of intent that would allow select to begin the due diligence process would kick off with official site assessment by a lead ground mount, completion of site plan submissions of interconnection application. SIMP, there'll be costs associated with the submission. The LOI will include language around reimbursement, the IA fee should the town decide not to move forward with the project. Otherwise, that fee will be incorporated overall project development costs. But I think that's where we gotta discuss is, because I think our preference exactly is to lease the property, not to own the system. And I think that's where we need to have more discussion with them on it.
Okay, so.
Because finding the off takers and everything else for that larger one is gonna be, you know, I know it said there's companies that will take care of that, do this and that, but here's my problem with owning this thing. If it's larger than just for our little needs is going out and finding those people. So we say, okay, we got a 20-year life payback or whatever on this thing. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, okay, somebody can offer cheaper power, I don't know. But now we have stranded costs, okay? And so now we're in the red, not in the green on this, and that's my worry. I don't want to get into this, and I don't really want to go into the power business.
Well, and
You know?
from a staffing perspective,
Right.
who would be responsible? Would there be current staff at the town responsible for this, or would it require?
Contract out
Manage.
for the different ones, you know, I don't think we would want to get into the billing or anything else, or the sales, so there supposedly there are companies out there that'll take care of it for us, but the key is.
Well,
I don't know if we really want to get in that deep, I'd rather lease it and say, okay, you own it, that's your problem to find the users, we would use. Whatever amount, we would, sign up to use, part of the power for it ourselves,
that was
you know?
what we.
And that would give us like, whatever, 15% or whatever the discount would be on our electric use, but. I don't like the idea of owning one. I know there are communities that have, but.
I'm not comfortable with us owning it. I mean, I think we would have to at least, at the very least, have another town engagement about solar, just to hear what the people of the town think about
Yeah.
owning versus leasing. And we can do that anyway and have that to find out if the people of the town think we should own it, then we can try to figure out a way to do that, but I don't know if the people of the town really want the town manager to be worried about solar contracts.
I'm not even worried about it as we speak, cause I'm just thinking, you're presenting something and then all of a sudden something happens that's out of control, I mean. One of the things that, perfect example is, okay, back in the mid-80s, okay. There was a company called Perk, I don't know if you know them in Orrington, and they came and they said, hey, we're gonna give you, trash at $25 a ton, okay? That deal fell apart 3 different times until 2018 when it finally expired, because I was part of rescuing it the other time with Bangor Hydro. Problem was they could buy the power. All the projections said power rates are gonna be like 13 cents. So they were, I think, paying back then 13 cents per kilowatt from PERC was from them. So they had to reorganize. That didn't work out, so we had to reorganize again, because what happened in the middle of that was deregulation, and deregulation cut their ability to even more in half, because now they could only transmit it. So they ended up dropping, I think it was to like 8 cents kilowatt, and that actually saved that deal up until 2018 when it finally expired. But perfect example, we don't know anything that's gonna happen here, and it could easily be that rather than people, you know, because they can leave after a year, that's the most troubling thing. So if you're producing something and we have it figured out that it's gonna take us 12 cents, let's say, per kilowatt to sell that power, and all of a sudden something comes out and that power drops to 8, who's going to sign up for ours? And that means we're gonna end up going to the taxpayers to make up that hole, because we're gonna be on the hook for the financing and paying back the bond. That's honestly what scares me.
I'm not comfortable.
It's a lot of things that could happen. I don't mind, you know, if they wanna do it, that's the key. And I think, I don't know if the board actually has ever had permission to sign over a certain number of years deal anyway, so it's gonna have to go to town meeting to even get that approved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I don't wanna bring them something that's not.
Right.
Right,
Smart or
feasible, right. I think I wanna go to the site and walk and see, because I haven't done that yet, and kind of look at the diagrams, and look at the layout, because I have concerns about like the adjacent property that might not be used for this, but does it, like, if it's, I don't know, if it's owned by the town, like some of the other property, would we be blocking ourselves to accessing that property for any other future use?
No,
I don't know how
only
they do
because it's
that.
gonna be on top of the landfill and you can't do anything else with it. So basically, when you look at those helioscopes that he did that
Right,
show the arrays,
yeah.
that's on top of the landfill. You'll
Right,
never
I
be
know
able to
that.
build anything on top of that.
But we
Anyways.
were talking earlier about. Could this bring on at some point a facilitation of a reorganization of how we use that land at the transfer station? And I know the wood bank uses a big part of that land, and would we need to move the brush, because of the solar, would we need to move the brush pile to another place? And then would we need to ask the wood bank to move to a different area? And so it could create that. So I think definitely you should go out and.
Yeah, I do wanna go out.
And
And I'm just curious too, like using the landfill as the base for a project like this, we own the landfill, let's say we lease this structure
Yeah.
to, you know, the right to the company to use it to generate solar. Could there be a situation where we need to do work on the landfill that's going to impact that infrastructure? I have no idea about anything about landfills.
So we have
Are
to,
we
it has to be mowed because you can't allow anything to grow on it because it's sealed.
right?
Basically, it's got clay seal or glacial till, which is heavily clay material. And then there's loam over that to seed it down. I found out we closed this landfill about a year before I actually did my first one in Sangerville. So, but so I know it very well on what they did to do this. No, I've closed the landfill from operation to like covered it. It was in my first town. But you have to maintain them, so you have to mow them each year. And of course, when you go up there, you'll see the white tubes coming out of it. And that is for letting the methane breathe out of it. So it doesn't blow up one day. So you can't. And so that's why they make perfect spots for solar. Nobody's complaining. They're up high. You're not gonna see up on top of the hill for the most part, unless you're in an airplane or anything else, or so that's why they make perfect places, because there's no NIMBYism usually, it's a landfill, okay? You've already lived with a landfill, adding solar on top of it is not gonna be the end of the world.
Right, I guess what I was wondering is,
Yeah.
I think I didn't fully understand the landfill is closed and sealed, because I wondered if we needed to do something
Yeah,
to that landfill, would we be impacting or compromising the solar structure if something had to be done? to that
no,
landfill?
hopefully we never will have to do anything as long as we don't have any problems. The one thing that I learned from one of the class I went to that classes, it was a lunch and learn thing from Maine Power Options, was that since these are above ground arrays, all the conduit from one array to the other is at the end of it, linking them together, and then to the down on the level ground, I think is where they have the AC DC converter. That runs over the land, so when you are having to maintain it, which I'm assuming that that's a question we still have to ask, is we would flip that somehow onto them, because when you mow, you have to go in and then you have to back that tractor all the way back out again, or mower because you can't come out the other end because there's conduit on the other side.
But wouldn't the solar company be responsible for mowing?
I would think
That's
near
what
their array, yeah, and so
I
that we'd have to
believe
make sure they do that.
Everybody we spoke to
Yeah.
said that they take care of all of the maintenance.
Right. Right, but, we may still have to do around it, I don't know, that's something that we would have to figure out, on, as part of it. So I guess, I know we can't make a decision now, and Ted wants to come on February 3rd and discuss this some more, and I
He
think
is
those
so
are the
eager for a
questions.
letter.
Well, and that's,
Eager to
with the
bring
letter of
that.
intent, that means, I would think that would mean we're gonna do business for Select, so are they going to own it at that point, is what I would think.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, because otherwise, I don't think we necessarily have to do it, because,
But we have financial penalties if we sign a letter.
well, and that's why
With it.
I think that's why they would own it in that case, because they just hadn't told us what they would lease the land for, because the letter of intent is that $5,000 and make sure that there's capacity in the lines and at the substation. And so, if we were paying for that ourselves, right, because we're gonna do that smaller one, then we would move forward. For the larger one, I think the letter of intent is there, and where he says, oh, there'll be a penalty or whatever if you pull out, is because if they find out we can move forward on it, and then we say, yeah, we changed our minds, well, they've spent $5,000 and get no return.
Right,
I
but if
think that's
they're
what-
going to lease the land,
That's,
then I think
right.
we're probably okay, because I remember the cost of building our own field out there was upwards of $500,000.
yeah, I think I think we're at 3 megawatt, but I haven't got into the,
Other
like,
things.
what the
to
things,
build.
right. Well, and the thing is, though, there is gonna be all kinds of money available to build these and borrow them, but that's my problem is the market changes or shifts. We now have to say, and it's gonna be, remember those selectmen back in 2025, they sold us, this was the greatest thing in the world, and now I'm paying, $20 a year to bail it out, because nobody wants to buy the power for whatever reason, because I don't know, nuclear fission was created, and we're now getting power from the heat out of the, Earth's core, which is not unheard of, because they do that in Iceland and other places.
For a letter of intent, is that something that we would need to take to the town?
I think, well,
Have we
yes
addressed
and
the
no.
topic of
That's-
solar in this way with the town?
I think
That
we would
setting?
wanna still try to get the money. I would encourage that if we were gonna do that, that we would also bring like a lease and everything else at that point. And to have them approve a longer term contract would be the deal on
I
that.
think at the very least, we have to have a public engagement
Right.
and have the town come.
I just wasn't sure if we can enter into a letter of intent and something like this without.
Well, because, well, that would be the problem. So you'd be tying the hands, let's say for $5,000 and the town votes it down, then it would be 5,000. So I think you're correct in that. And, we do it now, then we're gonna owe it. So I think that's why I was starting to say that I think it's best to go to that town meeting with everything. Say, okay, it's gonna be a 25-year deal. They have 2 chances to renew it. It's, They're paying for all the upfront costs, they're taking the chance and everything else. See, that's why we know that there was a company out there that I talked to, that I've dealt with when I was in Allenstown, that is convinced that there's not capacity in the lines or at a substation to take this additional power. Because I believe it all lies in Bucksport, and they put in a bunch of things, and there's a list of different projects. But Select says there is capacity in the lines from what they're looking at, so they're rolling the dice. Now, our report said that Dana Law said this, it said, we could get 8,000, I think this is a lot more than 8,000 for the lease. But basically they said, all right, well, you pay us 15,000, we'll do this RFP for you, and then $5,000 for this capacity study. But don't worry, when the solar company decides to develop this, then you'll just have them pay you back for that. Well, if we do this whole thing and we find out nobody is going to, there isn't capacity in the line, we've lost that money. That's why I think it makes sense to go with the main power option selected in the contractor. If there was no question there, then it would be fine.
Brooke, did
But
you have
yeah.
a comment?
I think probably this was addressed a year ago, but I still question. There's also the option for buying into a farm that's wherever, like solar power. And so can you just in 2 seconds remind me why we would do that?
Well, we can, so in this case here, we're talking about so we got a useless piece of land basically sitting there, so there's a chance of getting, I would just say $20,000 a year, let's say, for a lease for that, right? Then we would buy the power from that to help encourage the development of it, and then we'd get 10 or 15% discount. So in this case, it would be the same thing. It would basically be like if we did that other thing, it would be like a 15% discount on our electrical use. And it wouldn't be happening necessarily in Castine.
No.
That's where he is. Right, so that's
the risk, you're taking a risk to get that 20.
right. We could get both otherwise, if this works out.
We're hoping to get the 20 because there are things we'd like to do out of the transfer station.
Exactly.
There are important facilities that need to be constructed out there, and
Like a bathroom.
for the
Running
people who
water.
work out there. That makes me crazy. So that's why we wanted to do something where we were bringing in some revenue that we could use to offset any building that we did do out there. So that's why we're trying to do it. And it's just taking a lot longer than we anticipated.
So I think I lost you at one point there.
Yeah.
So can you help me understand? So
Yeah.
let's say Ted wants to come here next week,
Yep.
present us with a letter of intent. Do we as a board
I
have
don't-
the authority?
I don't
if he
think we
does
should.
that?
I don't think we should,
Not
because
should,
we're
not if we
finding.
should, But do we have the authority to enter into a letter of intent on behalf of the town without going to town meeting, having it? I don't know if we've addressed this issue previously at the town meeting. Like about.
Derek, why don't,
I'm not sure. That's a funny question. The safe answer, I'll say no, right?
No, we
Is
don't
there
have
some,
authority. Or
right.
that hasn't been addressed.
Is there some gray area there? There could be. I mean, there's a lot of things we would do some studies on, and they end up saying, okay, it's not a good thing, or something like that. If we find the money in the budget, ideally we've budgeted for solar power because it's kind of in the eyes, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend signing a letter of intent until May is just around the corner to get that answer. And that gives us a chance to get more information in there. It also gives a little more time for other things to transpire with these rules that they're writing and of like CEI, which has money out there for community solar for towns. Because if we decide to go the smaller one, that one we could own and not have a lot of risk, right? Because we would be using the power. It's gonna be designed for what our buildings use. So that would be one that I'd say, okay, we're gonna lock in and say we're gonna use our own power, because then if we own it, we don't have to worry about selling it. We already have the buyer of the power, right?
Right.
And the son's making it, so you gotta get over the hump of the 20 years or whatever the
But
payback
we have
is.
to come up with the money to
Right,
build it.
which potentially is out there from federal resources soon, but we're still gonna have to pay that back. But in that case, we know we have the user of the power going forward.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we're not gonna jump ship on ourselves. And of course, that power, but it's still factored in, the price of it is factored in based on what the current cost, where you can buy anyplace else, keep it competitive and a little bit below. But they need to make so much for a kilowatt hour or whatever in order to sell it and then finance it, either pay back the debt service.
I'm just gonna say that I personally am still more comfortable with leasing it.
I am too, I am too. But you think about if we put solar on top of the, we kind of said the roofs are kind of small, they wouldn't produce a lot of power at like the sewer treatment plant, right? In that case, we would, there's two ways we go with that. We would own it, or if it was feasible and nobody apparently would do it, because there's not enough power being generated, then we would do it. Like, let's say new fire station may have a lot of roof space on it. And that potentially would have enough square footage for somebody to produce a lot of power. So in Allenstown, we had, I think it was 1/2 of the fire station roof had solar panels on it. And we got a 10 or 15% break on our electric rates so we'd get like $800 a month or something like that, that they would send us back. So, and that's, I don't know if there's potential. I haven't really looked at the whole sewer treatment plant, see all the land, if we mowed down trees and everything else to try to do that. But that would be the way they would put up the money and then we'd get a small discount. But now they're creating programs, as Brooke was just alluding to. We might not want to look at the solar panels there, but get the same deal because we bought into a farm someplace else, you know, and we'd still be, you know, doing a good thing for the environment, things like that, without having to look at them.
The other
you know?
thing that we did talk about last year was using our community resilience partnership money.
Yeah,
$50,000, it comes in $50,000 chunks
yeah,
to build different solar projects for water related, the pumping buildings. and
Yeah.
whatnot. We looked at that. But we're gonna have to look at it because it might be smarter just to sign up for a solar field.
yeah,
and
for
use-
in
and
someplace
use
else.
that money
right.
for different.
Because that's really what we're doing, is we're going to create the credits that we gotta sell, right? To other people, so in this case, we would be purchasing those credits for
Right, we're
those
just
other fields.
purchasing,
You know, that would still be reducing our carbon footprint, that's all.
But it will
Right.
go to town meeting.
Right, so I think that's what we're gonna end up telling them is, yeah, I don't think we're gonna be there, cause we need to get a town meeting vote.
I mean, he can still come and talk to us.
Right, well, but I think he should, cause he wanted to talk or zoom in or whatever.
I just think, I really think we should, I mean, this is complicated, and I really think we need to get a better perspective. I mean, we need to be very clear. Are we gonna lease? Are we gonna own? How big? And I just think that, you know, we're still gonna be doing several weeks of information gathering before we can even make a decision.
Well, and I think that's why we want him to come on the third.
Exactly.
Explain options to us, that's why
Exactly.
they're on contract with the state.
But if I can make a suggestion.
Rather than us paying for another consultant to tell us this
Yeah.
stuff.
I just think that since this is complicated, I think we should have a work session exclusive. I mean, the only thing on the agenda is going to be the solar, because that's going to take a full hour. Just by the time he gets done, by the time we ask a lot of questions, that's a work session.
Yeah, agreed.
So you wanna kick him off to the 10th?
What else do we have?
On what, on the 3rd? I don't know what you got going on now.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think it's still right up
I don't
in
mind
the.
coming on the third.
You coming on
If
the
he's,
third.
he knows that we're not ready to enter into
Yeah.
11/10. So
Yeah.
everything.
But that's gonna be a regular meeting, so I don't know what else,
Oh, is that a regular select board meeting?
Yeah,
Oh, I'd rather do a
So
work
we should
session.
do-
Let's do a work session.
Until the
Alright.
10th then.
Okay. And I'll just tell them that.
And it'll be, the whole work session will be just
Alright.
Exactly.
1
And
hour.
then I want everybody to bring in the audience, the thousands watching at home and around the world on YouTube, to have their questions ready for them.
Solar, we'll put out an email blast, we'll let people know we're going to be discussing solar at the landfill, come with your questions. All right, moving on.
Alright,
Sidewalks.
I gotta get back to my agenda.
Uh,
Sidewalks, I sent you a little stuff on sidewalks. I actually spent a little time. Talked to Sean also about like a machine and things, so, you know, of if we were to do the sidewalks, cause my concern was our sidewalks are very narrow, so like a normal. Bobcat or anything, they're just too big, so there is a machine that's got, I think does 38 feet. I forget what it is, it's like 18,000, but then there are other attachments on it for salt and sand, so. Of course, then you're talking about manpower, whether we could fit it in, we probably could sandwich it in with our current staff, but I haven't crunched any numbers or anything because. I didn't wanna waste a lot of time doing that before you guys actually discuss what your options are.
I brought tonight excerpts of snow removal ordinances from some different
Yep.
communities, Augusta, Bangor, Belfast, and Orono, and that came from the committee that was created before. It was very kind of them to share this with us. And so because of the liability issue, is it, I'm just gonna throw this out there to anybody, is it better for us to do the work ourselves, have our town, our public works employees clear the sidewalks? Or is it better to ask homeowners to clear the sidewalks in front of their homes, homeowners and businesses to clear the sidewalk in front of their structure? That's the question.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what we have to figure out.
I mean, then the other side of that, Roberta, is if we were to choose to have residents responsible, who's going to enforce when it doesn't? You know, like, I mean, I think enforcement is going to be a big part of this problem. I would advocate that we take care of it, and that the homeowners, you know, like basically we have an ordinance that when there's a snowstorm, public works people will be clearing the sidewalks, and homeowners need to make sure that their sidewalks aren't blocked with, you know, cars or bikes or whatever. You know what I mean?
I understand. I think enforcement will be sticky and ugly. I agree. But in my mind, I'd like to hear more from the town about this, and I would really like to have a public listening session and just have the townspeople come in.
Okay.
And give us their feedback and give us their thought. I agree, Dan, enforcement would be a bear.
Yeah.
But I think I'd really like to hear from them. So I know that I've already mentioned 2 potential listening sessions, and it seems like we have several other things on our agenda that will require listening sessions. So February and March just might be big listening session months. We'll have one every week. I don't know. Depends on what the select board will put up.
Listen, we're being
Yeah.
we're being transparent about all the issues that we're facing, and we want people's involvement, and that's the bottom line for me.
And to speak to what Amy said at the last meeting, this is a really important safety issue. And
Really important.
we need to treat it as such.
Yeah, I mean, even just walking down here from the academy, you know, there are no sidewalks. I mean, the street, I'm on the street, and then, you know, as I came down, the students are behind me on the street. I mean, it's just, and as I said in the last meeting, if we're gonna implement the comprehensive plan and we wanna have Castine be an economically viable year-round community, I think there's some basics that we need to either enforce or offer, however that happens, to make the town accessible to people who live here year-round of all ages And we shouldn't have to be, you know, out in the streets, because all the streets get narrowed as we're working with snow removal in the winter. And I don't think it's, I think, plenty of times you can go to in the streets or the sidewalks are cleared, one way or another.
That's
right. And it might be, you know, maybe we have an option that residents, you know, are, have an option to be clear your own street, or if you want to pay the town to clear your street, then your bill or you're paying a fee for that service. You know, as a way to contribute to some costs that would be involved, but those could be things that we think about, or
It's
ideas other
interesting.
people have.
It'd be a special function district where the sidewalks are.
What's that?
A special function district, so they'd get a special portion of their tax bill, let's say, but that would be
Yeah.
an odd one too, but.
If they decide
Yeah.
that they want the town to do in front of their
Yeah.
house.
They have something they put in
They
their
can do
window
it.
that signifies that they want the
Yeah.
town to clean their sidewalks and,
They
you know.
pay an extra.
Who knows, next time
Yeah,
our
I don't know.
problems are-
I will have to look at the legality of
I don't
that to
know.
do it, cause I don't know if you can just pick and choose on that one.
Well, and on the same note, you know, Liz Parrish has brought up many times that branches, you know, tree limbs, you know, people, you know, sometimes you can't walk down some streets because there's branches hanging overhead. I mean, it speaks to, are we going to require residents to make sure that the sidewalks are clear? You know,
Exactly. Well,
And I think you gotta do an ordinance to do that.
we
though,
do. We'll have to
so-
write an ordinance. This is,
Right,
you know what, it's good that it's coming up now in the middle of the winter again.
Yep.
Because it gives us the rest of the year to get it done before next winter. But I'll just throw out too that I noticed today that Bangor is now offering free sand and salt for people if they wanna come pick it up, and then they can, you know, throw out the sand and salt on their stuff. And I don't know that we can go that far, that we'll have that kind of money, but maybe there are things that we can do
Yeah.
to help. They want to work with the town on this. Okay, thank you. Oh, Penny, I'm sorry.
Related to that, I think last time when it got shut down, one of the big arguments was, we were told that, the town could not ever be liable.
it's what the law
If they did-
says.
As long as they didn't plow the streets. I mean, plow the sidewalks, and it just, I don't know whether that's true or not, but I think that was an argument that a lot of people listened to, and it was a lot of the reason why nothing happened.
Yeah,
Well, I think there's a law specifically says no town's liable for,
if you do, it's basically.
is liable to
says-
an action for damages to any person on
Yeah.
foot.
Yeah, if you don't plow, if you don't clear it, then you're not liable,
Do
which
we know-
makes no sense to me.
But if we put it on the homeowners, do we know whether the
Ah.
not doing it, if the homeowner doesn't do it, are they liable?
That
I mean,
is a
That's-
possibility,
Yeah.
I would think.
Post offices around the country all do really good snow cleaning and slip and fall prevention.
Yeah.
Because they are otherwise a target for lawsuits.
As would, I think, you know, most, I guess I can't speak for sure, but I mean, it's kind of a classic slip and fall where commercial property owners are careful. The entrances to their properties and, you know.
Yeah.
And you can see cases, you know, how long was the slush there? Was it ice? Was it dirty? You know, when did it last snow? I mean, you're gonna have that risk, but it's also part of the responsibility of owning. You know, at least a commercial property, and I would think also a residential property.
Well, and I think also we got a lot of pushback from summer residents who, didn't want this thing.
Right.
They spend the winters where there's no snow.
But life goes on, right, up here. I mean, that can be contracted out, just like a service where
Right.
many of them are getting their driveways plowed out so that the fire department can get
Most
it
of
if
them are.
needed, or the oil delivery can get it, absolutely.
So
It's
they
the
can-
service that can be contracted.
exactly.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Okay, all right, so, oh, Gil,
Can you just quickly give me the parameters that you're talking about? It's not gonna be a whole peninsula, obviously, but it's just the,
well, that's another thing that I think we need to decide, is it every sidewalk in Castine? Is it just the sidewalk on Main Street? Is it, you know, and I think that's something else that we have to decide. In my mind, I kind of think if there's a sidewalk, it should be cleared.
Yeah.
It's my personal opinion, but, I know there were a lot of homeowners that felt like, well, I live on Flippin Street and I shouldn't have to clear mine because nobody walks there. Well, yeah, they do. They just walk in the street like I do, but anyway.
There's one other piece, I think that the former, I'm here because Mark is happy. That was, there are a lot of sidewalks that, are sort of sidewalks. Either they need to be given up as a sidewalk or they need to be repaired as a sidewalk. So there's a gray area also that needs to be addressed.
Right, we have that larger
Yeah.
overall sidewalk issue.
And that's part of an infrastructure question, because, you know, if there are sidewalks, we really should get them in proper working order.
Right.
Or seed over them.
Yeah.
Some of them, you do see where the winter sand is, you know, shrunk them down over time, and they're now part of the
The
lawns.
one in front of my house is 2 feet below the ground.
Yeah.
It's there.
Is there grass there though? Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying, that's what people start wanting to do, you know, instead of mowing, I mean, instead of, being the sidewalk, you'll see the dirt and then seeding it down, say, this is no longer sidewalk, this is a part
Yeah,
of my
so
lawn.
it's a bigger, it's a much bigger issue, Gil, to your point.
Yeah.
We have to come up with an entire sidewalk plan.
An ordinance.
An ordinance.
Have to speak to
Maybe
those
you
kinds
do
of
it in
issues.
steps.
Yeah.
We'll take care of stuff.
But will we put in any ordinance? I think Orno's is the funniest one there, because it says that they shall be required to remove snow from 12 the next day, provided however that no person shall be required to remove any snow aforesaid on the Sabbath. So there'll be nobody out there shoveling on Sunday.
Which Sabbath?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was great language in there. It was like, all right.
That's all. Okay.
That I'm wondering if that was a long debate at town meeting going, I'm not shoveling snow on
Can you
Sunday.
imagine that?
Yeah, that must have been fun.
All right. So, moving on to the mobile vending unit ordinance and application. So Christian, and I've forgotten his last name, I apologize.
The gentleman who spoke to us, that
Christopher Broder. He came and spoke to us, about potentially opening his little hot dog cart down at the town dock, during the winter time for MMA students and others. I would assume he would sell anyone a hot dog, but anyway, so. I looked back through our mobile vending policy, and we have defined the season as May 1st to October 15th. Now, his request is outside of the time, but we don't have anything that says he can't do it. So I think that we need to decide. Okay, I'm just gonna say, I think we should let him try it. And I think we need to come up with a fee that would be appropriate for a wintertime fee.
What do we charge? What do we charge for the summertime?
Well, for the whole season, it's $2,500. Or no, maybe that was for a month, right?
No, season's
2,500.
depending on where it is.
But if we charged him, I don't know, if we charged him $100 a month or $200 a month to have his little hot dog cart.
I mean, I look at it as we're providing a real service to the town, and we're providing a service to the students. It's a good thing for the town, and I think a couple $100 a month would be fine.
Be kind of gravy. There's nothing in our ordinance that doesn't allow mobile vending in the winter. We've never said we can't have it. So my thought is, we allow him to do it, and then we see how successful he is and how it works, and then we can amend the ordinance for the May meeting.
Okay, I like that. And the other thing, listen, this might encourage somebody on the weekends to sell hot chocolate or something. I mean, I'm just, you know, like it would be nice to have a little bit more activity down there in the winter.
Yeah, I have a question. So the fact that our ordinance might not speak to the winter months, is there authority somewhere that allows us to allow someone to do this?
Just say it's a pilot project.
Yeah, I don't know if,
Like, I'm just curious where our authority comes from to
well,
do that.
Huh?
And there's always a concern when you allow an outside entity to come in and provide a service that competes with other entities. In
Yeah.
the summertime, it's a different story than the wintertime, I would just suggest. So I would suggest a concern from your perspective that it's not the same issue when we're trying to bring more people to town when there are lots of captive people along the coast of Maine. In the summer, make the waterfront more appealing, maybe mitigate the challenge of people coming here and not being supplied with services like food, because the food service
Right.
places in the summer aren't able to supply all of their desires.
Right.
Whereas right now, you're basically,
Right.
you know, it's not a bad idea conceptually. What Dan says, somebody wants to supply hot cocoa, somebody wants to do, you know, all of a sudden you're taking potentially taking some business away from only one or two locations that
Right.
exist. And they, at this time of year, are living on much thinner margins than they are in the summer. And I would just suggest you might want to think about that more, that you're more likely compromising or risking their survival and their service being perpetually available in a year-round nature by allowing a competition in time of year where there's not abundance and there's not a lack of services. Right now, they would probably say we could provide more capacity to the students' demands and the townspeople that are here right now, just as we are right now, like TNC and the bookstore and the variety store can say, we're nowhere near capacity right now. So if you allow somebody to come into town and sell hot dogs, those are hot dogs we're not selling. So it's just something to think about.
And that was the number one question at the top of my list, was how would this affect TNC and the other businesses? So
I just think it's a different,
I'm not
it's a
sure.
different paradigm in the summertime.
And that's true.
I don't think Tom's wrong. I think, you might wanna ask, or we might wanna ask, you know, if they think that's gonna be a big deal or not. But to answer Amy's question, regardless, I think of when the operation goes in, he has to have a permit. So the fee is set kind of for those other months, so it's kind of like unwritten in the ordinance, so to speak. So I think it's kind of like, I don't think we have an actual ordinance that says how much our copier fees are going to be or anything else. So it would be more like a policy type of thing.
Yeah.
In this case, where we'd say, okay, we're going to, and similar like what Brooke said, do this as a little trial right now, and we know there should be some type of a fee associated with it.
And also, if we're doing it as a trial,
Right.
it as a trial, let's say we do it for a 1 month trial. If the bookstore and TNC feels like it has impacted their business, you know, we can upfront, we can say, listen, we're trying this for 30 days.
Right.
And see how it goes. And after 30 days, we'll reevaluate.
Okay, I think we should go and talk to Todd and Snow and ask them what they think about it. But
Is Snow open again already?
No.
I haven't seen her be open, but, and, you know, we can talk to Compass Rose as well.
Yeah.
because
Right.
She sells,
Little thing
she
in
sells
back.
things in there, and we can see how they feel about it and then, but I think we give it a shot.
And he did identify a group that exists now, a customer group that exists now, but will not exist forever, and that's all the people working on the
That's-
dock.
That's true
And
too.
that was
That's
one
true
of-
too.
That was one of the, customer groups.
Yeah, he's hitting at that specific.
So I think we put this on the agenda for the next one. you and your travels stop into those businesses and ask what they think of it,
I
maybe.
will.
And then, I think that it would be fair. When you look at the fee schedule there, it talks about like every 14 days on public property. I gotta find it again here. Was $200 for every 14 days. So if you did 200 for the month, if you so chose, like Dan said, might not be a bad idea, or you could go 100. It really depends on what your choice is on that.
Or maybe, I mean, if we do this, we could ask Chris
Yeah.
to say, how many days, I mean.
How many
Right,
days?
right, because I don't know.
He's got a new dad, he's a student at the academy, he's not gonna be there probably every
Every day.
day.
Right,
And he's working this around his schedule, so
Right.
if he's like, look, I could be there maybe 10 days or 5 days in a month, then there may be a way for us to tailor.
Exactly.
right,
Permit
Exactly.
to, because otherwise
you're right.
if we charge too much, it just might not be
Right.
tenable for him.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's like,
Even-
I think Dan's idea of saying this would be a trial try for a month also, and if you think that's giving a serious impact to the other businesses that are noticing, then, you know, it isn't like he's going out and buying this hot dog stand, you know, and has a big, he's already got
Yeah.
it, so it's not like, you know, we're like, yeah, go ahead, and then we pull the wool out from under it, you know?
Well, before the next select board meeting, I will go and talk with, those other owners of businesses, do you have a bit of ability to speak with Chris and just ask him about how many days that he'll maybe plan to do this, and then we can help him set up a
Volunteer office.
fee.
An immediate schedule.
I was gonna say, I can talk to him too, but you know, either way.
And I think we do, you know, if we do it, we do it as an experiment, we see if it's going to work. It might only work this year, or it might only work as long as there are contractors down there.
Might need to be, ask him also about if he's buying, supplies.
Right, he doesn't buy, right.
You might be paying a premium for a
Right.
short, it might be 2 months, should be.
Yeah.
Let's,
And maybe
See what he says.
pay for a while, or,
Yeah.
well, yeah.
yeah.
I remember as a kid, we used to go to like WA Beans or Jordan's and get a big box of the red hot dogs really cheap. I don't know, I haven't seen the big boxes anymore, but
Buy,
yeah,
well,
right, so yeah.
Okay, so.
Of course, they're not gonna have the red hot dogs anymore, they're gonna have to be the natural casing swell. You'll have to use a different red dye, cause number 3 is gone now, right? So Swedish fish aren't gonna be red anymore.
Oh, dear.
I thought it was beets.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what they told you.
But they told
Yeah.
us.
yeah, that's what I was thinking too, but apparently not.
So I want to thank Dan for creating this great Castine project list. Is this yours?
Yeah, with Julie's help,
It's pretty excellent.
yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much. Did you want to take a few minutes and go through it?
Well, I mean, we could do that. We could go through it. Yeah, why don't I just pull this up here 1 second? And here we go. So what all I did, and I didn't try to create a hierarchy of, you know, what's more important or what's less important. I simply listed the projects, and this ties into, before I go into the list, this ties into how are we going to manage the projects? How are we going to manage keeping track of all of this? And before I'm just going to put the cart before the horse. I have 2 calls this week with 2 project management softwares, you know, companies. And one's called Asana and one's called UpClick, I think is it called. And basically, the second one's called ClickUp. I'm sorry, not UpClick. And so the idea would be we would feed these projects into the software, and just hypothetically, let's just say I was going to manage the lead on 2 projects, and Roberta was going to do 2, and Derek's going to do 3, and Amy's going to do 2. We can put notes and ideas into the software, and we would all have access to it. So if Derek updated some information, it would pop up, and I would say, "Oh, that's great. You know, we're moving along here. And so it's a way of us communicating outside of select board meetings and work sessions to keep track of everything. One of my questions, and Derek, I don't know if you can just reach out to the town attorney, just in terms of Freedom of Information Act, if we have a software that we're using to communicate with, okay?
Yeah.
And somebody wanted, somebody made a Freedom of Information Act request. I just want to make sure it's, before I go too deep into the software, is it legal for us to use something like this? It certainly will be effective. It will certainly help us manage everything. But I did want to ask that question up front, is can we use project management software legally? You know what I mean? I would think yes, because it's we can give people access to it, and we're certainly not trying to hide anything. Having said all that, I'm just going to rattle through the project list really quick, okay? So we had the Grow American Fund today. We talked about private-public partnerships. We talked about state and federal grants. You know, I put is the town purchasing local real estate to help affordable housing possible. I have a line item for the firehouse, the economic development coordinator, the waterfront, the traffic adherence safety, the town infrastructure, the solar, the succession planning for staffing, climate resilience, composting, recreational development, the Bastille Day, waterfront activities, employee reviews, digital migration to upgrade our stuff. We already talked about safe sidewalks, mobile event ordinance. So basically, I've listed all of these potential projects. That I chose some goals that we can all talk about, and then I thought there would be a way to prioritize them, 1, 2, or 3, if it's something we want to do now, or in 3 months, or in 6 months, and then who would be responsible. And so I just put this together just to kind of gather all these projects that we've been talking about and putting them in some kind of order. And I'm sure I've missed some. So if I've missed some, just email them to me and I'll update the list. And I'm having a work session with the people from one with a woman from Asana and one with a person from ClickUp this week, just to say, of the 2 softwares that I'm looking at, this one looks better than the other one, or vice versa. And they're not expensive. They're about $120 a year.
It looks great.
Ina, did you have a comment?
I just had a comment that was, obviously, I'm not a legal expert on your question about, you know, freedom of information filing and stuff, but I also looked at some of the different options. One of the things that you identified, or that they highlight in the feature of these project management aspects or tools, is that you can store your documents in them, right?
Right.
So it's probably, I suspect, it's probably just fine for you to use a project management tool, but your formal electronic storage should be on a secured computer in your in your offices.
Okay.
So you would rely entirely on those for your final copies. You might want to use them for sharing. That could be an option, but yeah, I think it's a good idea to consult the person you're talking with about how many of their features you want to.
Yeah, I mean, just for example, the 2 softwares I'm looking at, the ClickUp has a much better Gantt project tracking tool than Asana. Asana has one. It's just a little more work. And then I also want to see which software is easier just to learn, because all of us don't want to spend a lot of time learning new software. We want something that's pretty upfront and easy.
Thank you. Dan, this is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just to say one last thing, you know, certainly in my business life, we always had long lists of projects. You know, every meeting that we had, we would do an update on the project list. We would take things off. We would add things on. It just became a normal course of doing business that we had this this overview of all the projects that to help us keep on track.
Yeah, I think it's great. Thank you.
I like the free one, the Monday. I haven't really looked at it. I just opened it up briefly today. Well, Dan, if you look at the stuff that Karen sent you at the end, you'll see there's an email that I sent to Amy.
Yeah.
You know that I'm talking about technology upgrades, so that's gonna be one of the tasks that add into that with the various items that we need to think about updating, whether it's phone system, website, all those little things. Tablets or Google Chromes or whatever for the board, and creating Google Docs or packets, which will save money. Upgrade with OCR automatic in it, so all of our stuff we post online is searchable by just any word inside of it. Those are GIS, you know, I was just looking, like, when we're talking about land for sale in town or finding something, I'm like, wouldn't that be nice if I could have just popped up the GIS, looked up tax maps, comparing like what's available, where they are. So, yeah, all right, what else?
Can I ask a question? Just because I really should go. So before the composting proposal, have you guys already approved that for submission?
We did, yep. The compost plan.
Should you get a copy? I was just gonna send the latest version. What is your email?
It is, what is my email?
Amy Guto SB, I think.
Derek.
Right, I'll forward it to her. I have it. I'll forward it to you right now, the latest. How's
No,
that?
I'm gonna forward one.
Oh, you got a newer one already?
So just Amy Guto.
I honestly can't remember myself.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it is. It's Amy Guto SB at castine.maine.us.
Thank you.
I saw that enough today that I, with all the emails, I'm like, Amy's busy this morning.
Listen, I have a hard stop in 10 minutes. I just want to let everybody know.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
then do we need to?
I don't know. What did you want to talk about?
Should we move on into executive session?
I think so. I don't have anything else except for that. I was wondering about source water. But
that's
that
okay.
can come down
Yeah,
later.
that can wait.
And then, yeah, and the fire department, the overall thing is I don't want Randy to have to do those, so I think you're right. We can move in. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, then, I make a motion that we enter into executive session pursuant to Title I, MRS Chapter 13, Section 405.
Hey, honey.
6A, personnel matters, and I apologize, Tom, but we have to ask you to leave the room.
I am happy to leave.
Sweetie, are you going home? Can I give you a bag to carry and I'll walk home? Hold on.
And are we done? Or is everybody off the?
Yeah, we gotta still vote.
Not yet.
And second, I need a second.
I second it.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
And it is 6:56.
Okay.
Or 5:56.
And is part of this is
Hold on, I'm not ready. Yeah, hold on. I haven't shut everything off. Hold on. I can't see. I don't know what the heck that thing is up there. Hold on, I gotta go over there.
hold on.
Can you actually read those little things in there? I'm thinking like, this craziness. I don't think I can read this far away. All right, let's see. I gotta first kill stop here. Oh. Maybe. All right, now what happened?
I'm still here.
Yeah, I know you're still here, but this thing's deciding that it wants to be have a mind of its own. Hold on,